A new leader is headed to the Pentagon. Congress granted a waiver this week for the second time in 4 years so that General Lloyd Austin, U.S. Army retired, could become the Secretary of Defense. 15 former defense secretaries and service secretaries endorsed that waiver. 2 of them are Deborah Lee James, the 23rd Secretary of the Air Force under President Barack Obama, and Sean O'Keefe, a professor at Syracuse University and former Secretary of the Navy under George H.W. Bush. Secretaries, both of you, welcome. Madam Secretary, I start with you. Why were you in favor of this waiver, and what do you think that it means that Congress has granted it for the second time in 4 years?
Well, first of all, I think Lloyd Austin is a terrific pick to be our next Secretary of Defense. He has all of the qualities that you would wish to have in an incumbent for that position. He's got the leadership skills. He has the understanding of our worldwide defensive picture, everything from China to Russia to North Korea, all of the threats, the Middle East that we face. He has great experience with heads of state and coalition building. So he's got everything that you would want to see in a Secretary of Defense. The one issue was the issue of the waiver, and at least as I read the law, as I understand the background on the law, originally in 1947, this was put in place. It was a 10-year rule. They wanted civilian control of the military. Obviously, that is embedded in our Constitution, that principle. It was later reduced to 7 years. I don't know what's magic about 10 years, 7 years. He's been out for 4 years. As far as I'm concerned, he is plenty civilian enough. He's got all of the qualities, and I support him tremendously.
Secretary O'Keefe, thank you for joining us as well. That magic number of what's civilian enough, how does one determine that, not necessarily for Secretary Austin or for Secretary Mattis or for Secretary Marshall for that matter, but how does one determine that objectively looking at a candidate, do you think?
Well, certainly distance from the time of service in uniform and understanding fully the scope of the national challenges that are at hand is a criteria. And that's certainly the criteria that President Biden made as a determination of his nomination. And I agree with Debbie. He's the right guy for the right job in the right circumstances now, given the breadth of his experience, the fact that he has really focused on a range of issues that really are current today. And I mean, again, the most critical feature is 40% of the uniformed military active service today are people of color. So this notion of a diversity objective is not just a concept. This is something where the very idea that there is a leader in a position that those who aspire to service, who are people of color, as well as all of us as Americans, can see that as an inspiration going forward. He's got all the criteria to serve in that capacity, and this becomes a deciding feature that I think is critical at this time, at this juncture, given the national debate that we're underway with.
Secretary O'Keefe, we talked a little bit before we went on the air about the surprise that all of us found in the speed with which the waiver passed, the confirmation happened, and Secretary Austin likely to be sworn in very, very quickly. What does that say to you about any of the landscape here, any of the elements that we've discussed, the need for a secretary, the need for this secretary, the national security needs of the nation, and so on, that everybody really kind of worked together, something we don't talk about much in Congress, to get this done in a very, very fast way?
Absolutely. I think it's quite notable that the lead member of the Senate Armed Services Committee was Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, a Republican, who has great confidence in Lloyd Austin, who believes that he is exactly qualified for the capacity right now, and took it upon himself, I think, to take a leadership capacity with not only members of the Armed Services Committee, but among his colleagues in the United States Senate to really drive home the proposition that Lloyd Austin has the confidence of the President of the United States, which is a critical feature at a time when we're trying to repair relations with alliance partners across the globe, to be able to speak for the President with authority that they will be convinced that he is speaking for the President, and to also have a scope of understanding of what the nature of conflict requires that should give you pause before making determination to use the armed forces as an instrument of foreign policy by another means. Lloyd Austin fully understands that. And he has the characteristics of an individual who can inspire and motivate the armed forces at that time. All those factors are the things that I think Dan Sullivan very effectively prompted his colleagues in the Senate and across the Congress to appreciate, understand, and move promptly to move on the waiver request going forward.
Secretary James, Secretary O'Keefe used the words repair relations. One of the topics you and I have discussed on this program on a number of occasions is people. What do you expect to see Secretary Austin do to repair the relations with the career people inside the Defense Department, particularly in OSD, that have been moved around a lot because of reform that Congress has passed over the last number of years, but also who haven't, in some cases, had confirmed or appointed bosses for long periods of time over the last several years?
Well, this is where Lloyd Austin's leadership skills will really be put to the test. And again, I have absolute confidence that he is going to rise to the occasion. Not only does he have the experience in terms of leading large and complex organizations, he's actually got the human touch. He cares about people. He is a quiet professional. He's an excellent listener, something that far too many people have as a quality these days, but he does have it, and it will serve him well. He was asked about this very matter during his hearings on Capitol Hill. How will you work to restore the balance of civilian leadership and military leadership in the Pentagon? And he talked about really having a partnership with his senior civilians. And this is where, again, the input is so important. He'll be the final decision maker, of course, but he pledged to always get that input and to have them as full members of the leadership team have those seats at the table. I think, again, he's going to be fantastic when he meets with both military personnel and civilian personnel around the country and around the world. He's going to be someone that people will look up to with great admiration. He'll be fair, and I think with all the many things on his plate, we can talk about that, things that are upcoming. It's enormous. But I think he will put people issues, morale, recruiting, retention. I think these will be at the very top of the heap for Lloyd Austin.
Secretary James, Secretary O'Keefe, thank you both very much for joining me. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.